Cuba, the largest island in the Caribbean. With its unique blend of sun, sea and revolution, it's one of the most seductive places on Earth. It's also been stuck in a time warp since communists took over here 50 years ago.
How could it not be fun?
But Cuba's finally changing.
I think Ramon is rather enjoying being the boss.
Faced with financial ruin, one of the last bastions of communism on the planet is now undergoing a new revolution.
$800,000. That must be a palace.
Capitalism is coming to Cuba.
VIP.
The country is being transformed as the government loosens its iron grip. I'm meeting ordinary Cubans to find the winners and the losers in this new revolution. And I'm discovering whether this might actually be the last chance to see communist Cuba. Havana, Cuba's vibrant capital. Founded in the 16th century by the Spanish conquistadors, it's now home to more than 2 million people. Many of the cars here are still exotic pre-revolutionary relics, and they're the best way of seeing the city.
A lot of the city around the bay here. From this distance it just looks like anywhere else, but Havana is like few other cities.
Motoring around today in a classic 50s convertible, you soon see this place has a unique appeal. With rum, music, dancing, Havana seems all smiles and cigars.
It is a really attractive and alluring city. It's got this glorious colonial architecture that is crumbling away, but there's such a romance to this place.
Until the late 1950s, Cuba was run by an American-backed dictator, General Batista. His regime was infamous for decadence, corruption and greed. Many Cubans suffered extreme poverty, even as Cuba became a playground for rich Americans and the mafia. Then in January 1959, after a 7-year guerrilla campaign, rebel leader Fidel Castro overthrew the military regime and arrived triumphantly in Havana. Castro introduced radical social changes. The Americans were kicked out. Schools, hospitals and industries were nationalized.
Our political philosophy is representative democracy and social justice in a well-planned economy.
Cuba became the first and only communist state in the Americas. It was the height of the Cold War and Castro was welcomed into the arms of the Eastern Bloc. Backed and bankrolled by his new friends in the Soviet Union, he started building what he claimed was a workers' utopia on America's doorstep.
Many Cubans are justifiably proud of the achievements of the revolution. After the communists took power, they introduced free pensions, free funerals, child malnutrition was virtually eliminated, rates of literacy soared, even life expectancy increased because Castro ploughed money into healthcare as well as education and the arts. Gracias.
Visitors can get a taste of that egalitarian legacy here at the Ballet Nacional, one of the world's leading dance companies. So I've got my tourist ticket, which cost me about £20. Most of the people here are actually Cubans, and the price they pay for a ticket is much, much lower. The cheapest ticket for a Cuban costs only the equivalent of about 15 pence.
art for the masses. It's a bargain.
The arts were an important part of Castro's vision for the new Cuba. Ballet, traditionally elitist in most other countries, is seen as popular entertainment in communist Cuba. This Havana dance school, Pro Danza, trains 500 students for free, an education that in the West could cost tens of thousands of pounds a year. 27-year-old Yadira is a recent graduate. She's now a professional prima ballerina.
Speaking as somebody who can barely touch their knees, let alone their feet, that was magnificent. Are you okay? I get the impression that Cubans really, really love ballet and they sort of respect, almost worship ballerinas as well.
Pues sí, el ballet en Cuba es como decir el béisbol, que es el deporte nacional, pueblo cubano, ya sea desde un trabajador social hasta el más importante, puede disfrutar de ballet y saber lo que se está haciendo en escena sin ningún problema.
Just wondering whether you would be able to have become a ballerina if you had to pay for your lessons.
Pues sí que le agradezco al sistema cubano porque le da la posibilidad a estudiar a todos, no solo arte, estudiar toda la escolaridad, te dan las puertas abiertas para tú hacer y escoger lo que quieras hacer, ya sea ballet, ya sea música. Pero para mí el ballet me encanta porque precisamente como mejor me comunico es danzando y expresándome por el cuerpo.
Cuba's heady mix of idealism and revolutionary chic already attracts several million tourists a year, with increasing numbers from the UK. But there's a real dark side to life here.
As a visitor, it's very easy to be seduced by Cuba. It's a very colourful and an exciting place. It's also easy to forget this is still a totalitarian state with only one political party, the governing party, and no real elections.
Cubans have very limited civil rights. For the last 50 years, few have even been allowed to leave the island. Human Rights Watch describes Cuba as the only country in Latin America that represses virtually all forms of political dissent. Dissidents are routinely followed, harassed and imprisoned, so few Cubans dare criticize the regime in public. I was only allowed into the country on the condition I didn't meet with well-known dissidents, but I was permitted to speak to ordinary Cubans about their daily lives. And that gave me a great chance to see the reality of life in this country at a critical moment in its history. To find out what it's like to live in communist Cuba, I met a woman called Cecilia in a rundown part of Havana. All Cubans are entitled to heavily subsidized food and other services provided by the state. Cecilia took me to her local ration shop.
So, buenos dias, buenos dias, buenos dias. So what is this book that you've got?
La libreta es donde nos dan la canasta básica, donde nos dan el arroz, el azúcar en crudo, el fósforo, aceite. En eso consiste la libreta.
So it's the staples of life then. But this is interesting. What can you get rum as part of the
No.
That's separate. That you have to pay for. Yeah.
este es mi bodeguero, él es el que me despacha, yo le entrego la libreta, le digo lo que voy a llevar y él me despacha lo que yo voy a llevar, lo que yo quiero llevar.
Había aproximadamente 628.
Approximately 628 people. That's very precise. That's not approximate, is it?
Sí, preciso porque soy el administrador y todos los conozco. Y todos son mi familia.
And here's another customer.
The rations provide very basic food for Cuba's 11 million people. The rations aren't huge and the quality is generally low, but distributing and administering food on such a scale still puts an enormous financial burden on the state. Back at her home, I met Cecilia's family.
I'm the lady.
I'm a lady. Very nice to meet you. Señor. Mucho gusto. Simon.
Carlos.
Carlo.
Bueno, vamos a poner el café y te enseño el resto de la casa. ¿Puede ser?
This is very lovely of you. Thank you.
Like most Cubans, Cecilia is employed by the state. She works in a government pharmacy and earns an average wage here, about £15 a month. Her house is also state-owned.
¿Seguimos? Este es un cuarto.
Bedroom 1, bedroom 2. What are these doing?
Porque la casa está en mal estado, está apuntalada, la casa se moja y para que el techo no se vaya a caer.
The house is in danger of collapsing.
Sí, es peligroso.
Oh my goodness.
Desde que yo vivo 16 años los palos existen.
Is it frightening to be looking up at the ceiling when you're in here in bed thinking the roof could collapse?
Sí, me preocupa que se vaya a caer el techo y que vaya a pasar una tragedia. Que Dios permita que nunca pase nada y si va a pasar que no estemos dentro de la casa.
Whose room is this? Is for Carlos?
Mi hija y Carlito.
Okay. Carlito. Alright. So there's another support here in this room propping up the roof, which looks in pretty terrible condition.
Since the early days of the revolution, the state has controlled all aspects of life, even the building trade, deciding who gets access to a builder and materials. Cecilia's been waiting for a new roof for 16 years.
Oh, careful.
No te aconsejo que te
Don't
pares ahí porque eso está un poco... La madera está podrida ahí.
Okay, so the floor.
Y se puede partir y te puedes caer. No aconsejo que...
We don't want to fall through.
Mira, te darás cuenta. Mira.
Yeah.
Todo eso se moja, cae escombros. Cuando llueve, esto es demasiada agua la que baja por aquí.
Oh, goodness.
Preocupada y siempre nerviosa cuando toca llover, cuando hay ciclones. Vivo con el temor, pero ya me he adaptado.
Cecilia's living conditions are difficult, but she's not alone.
You can see Cecilia's house from the outside here and you can get a sense of the state it's in. The roof has partially collapsed. You can see all the brickwork is falling apart. And it's far from unique. This is completely normal. You look at the house here, one of her neighbours, the first floor is almost completely gone. There's somebody living here. This is still somebody's home. All of the buildings here are in a terrible state. None so bad as the one just 20, 30 metres down the road here. That's actually collapsed. Much of Havana is now falling down.
Havana's deteriorating buildings are a symptom of a much wider problem in Cuba. The economy of the island is in a state of complete collapse. For 30 years after the revolution, Cuba received generous subsidies from the Eastern Bloc. Russian money, advisors and arms poured into the country. The US reacted by imposing a trade embargo which they hoped would quickly topple Castro's regime. 5 decades and more than 10 US presidents later, the embargo remains in force. The economy here has been failing for decades, partly because it's been strangled by the US embargo, and partly because of inept government management. The situation's got worse and worse, and Cuba now imports twice as much as it exports. Fidel Castro stepped aside and his brother Raul now runs the country. The dire state of the economy has forced his government to do the unthinkable. Loosen their grip and send people who've previously been employed by the state out to work for themselves.
I've got the official list here, the very, very precise list of the 181 jobs that the government is allowing people to do as part of the reforms. They're very specific. They include some that you might expect, things like taxi driver, construction worker, shopkeeper as well. So those are jobs that in the past would have been done by people who were working for the government. Now, if you get a license, you can set yourself up in that position on your own. But there's also a few jobs in here that you might not expect. There's a mule driver, a palm tree trimmer, a well digger, a button coverer, and my personal favourite, as part of the reforms, you can now get a job working for yourself as a dandy.
I only spotted a couple of dandies. That's a gentleman in traditional costume. But other new businesses were thriving. A new word has entered the Cuban vocabulary. Entrepreneur.
Selling flowers, shoes, clothes, calculators, mobile phones. It might not seem unusual. You have to remember how novel all this is. Before the reforms, people would be arrested for starting a small business or trying to open a shop. Now there's evidence of consumerism, of an entrepreneurial spirit almost everywhere here.
The government has always employed millions of workers at great expense. But the nation's finances are in such a state that the regime has decided it must cut up to 20% of the government workforce. They're going to slash 1 million public sector jobs, while the state will continue to run health, education and transport. Many other services are now shifting into private hands. They're calling it an economic upgrade. But how might unleashing private enterprise affect Cubans who've only ever known life under a communist system? Jesus is one of the entrepreneurs on the front line of this economic revolution.
Look at these shiny sunglasses. Let's see the man. This is a loo roll holder. You've got a towel rail here. Soap dish. This is all stuff that previously could only be bought through government shops. Very, very hard to get hold of. Very short supply. And now you can buy them privately. This is the beginning of a big chain of DIY shops. Cliente.
It's like spotting a business opportunity. Tiene que estar activo con los clientes. Siempre recuerda que si compra algo le damos algo gratis en la primera mesa que anda buscando. Un fregadero doble o sencillo con el curridor. Izquierdo, un momento. Amado. Oh.
I have no idea where he's going. I think, he's offering him up a sink from somebody else.
Dale 100 pesos. Con todo. Oye, que estamos 2 meses de garantía también. Y a ser iniciable.
Este mismo doble. 80 pesos.
Doble.
¿Aquí mismo para la parte de Ovina?
No, doble no ha habido ninguno aquí.
Sí,
no. Aparte, esto es una sola vez en la vida. Lo que vas a hacer aquí.
And the look on the señora's face here, she wants a new sink.
Pero un precio barato. Un precio más barato.
Do a deal. No
quieren, que no quieren. No, vale muy caro el fregadero. Vale muy caro. Pero vamos a vender algo. Tranquilo, que vamos a vender algo. Algo vamos a vender. Algo.
Building supplies used to come from government shops, if you were lucky enough to find one with stock. Kitchen sinks and everything else were available on the black market, but buying one was risky.
If you did some DIY or renovations to your flat or house here, and you couldn't account entirely for where you got the money for it, or where you bought the supplies, then your renovations could be torn down. The inspector would come round and say, you're not authorised to do this, and they would take them down. It's got some pipes. What happened there? What happened there? Was the deal done?
Le vendí una tubería para el agua de su casa, que le hacían falta. Le resolvía bien, un precio para mí y un vecino enfermo. Barato.
Can we ask how much she got for the pipes? Just between us.
Se la vendía a 12 CUC. Claro, estoy contento, siempre se buscó algo. Vamos.
Since the reforms were introduced, Jesus has become one of 400,000 Cubans who signed up to work for themselves. For the first time, private businesses are paying substantial taxes into the state's coffers.
Tenemos que hacernos algo frío ahí, mi hermano. And the beer.
Yeah. Cheers, here's to your business. Good luck, okay? Good luck. So why did you want to start? Why did you start working for yourself, selling plumbing supplies? How did it come about?
La plomería es algo extra, que es un suplemento extra que entra, un extra de dinero que entra para la casa. En realidad yo soy traumatólogo, me gradué de traumatólogo y ahora estoy haciendo fisioterapia y rehabilitación.
You're a doctor, actually practicing in hospitals at the moment.
Ajá, así mismo, yo atiendo pacientes con politraumatizados que llegan en servicio de urgencia.
This is really surprising. A trauma doctor, an A&E doctor working selling plumbing supplies. Is that normal here? Does it not seem surprising to you?
Me gusta atender a las personas, hacerle bien a las personas. Yo nada que yo cogí medicina en la carrera de salud pública porque no es gratis, no es cogerla, no como otros países que tienes que tener dinero, no en Cuba ni puedes cogerla porque es gratis, ¿entiendes? Desde que está la licencia andando se dio la posibilidad de eso, dando la licencia en arrendador por cuenta propia.
Into that. Thanks, Jesus. Dr. Jesus. It was very interesting. Jesus didn't really want to talk about it, but I know already that doctors here can earn as little as £15 a month, which is really a pittance in any country. I suppose in a way his story shows the best and the worst of Cuba, because he's not from a wealthy family, but he's been trained as a doctor by the state. He works in Cuba's world-class health system, and yet he's not making enough money as a doctor to survive, so he's got to supplement his income by selling plumbing supplies. It's an extraordinary situation. It raises some pretty tricky questions about life in Cuba.
The state doesn't have enough money to pay doctors, and many take second jobs to survive. It's ironic the communist government is now hoping capitalist businesses might provide them with enough money in taxes so they can save the economy and protect their public services. Surely what all this really shows is that Castro's communist system simply hasn't worked. I headed out of the capital and into the countryside, the traditional engine of the Cuban economy. They've grown sugar here for more than 200 years, and Cuba was once the world's biggest producer. After the revolution in 1959, Castro nationalized the sugar industry and put tens of thousands to work on collective state farms. It worked well, at least for a few years. This is the Toledo sugar mill. its heyday, it was one of Cuba's largest sugar factories, processing more than 5,000 tons of sugarcane a day. Wow. But in the last decade, half of Cuba's sugar mills have closed down. This is a sad place. The Cuban economy was really built on sugar, on the sugar industry. And the profits from it became completely indispensable to the communist government. But the collapse of the Soviet Union was a catastrophe for the sugar industry because it became completely dependent on Soviet subsidies. The Soviets used to buy entire harvests at inflated prices. This guaranteed income meant that Cuba didn't need to compete. Workers had jobs for life and many became lazy. They had a saying, the government pretends to pay us and we pretend to work. State farms became inefficient and corrupt. So when the Russian orders abruptly stopped in the early 90s, the impact was devastating. There were shortages and even starvation, a time Castro euphemistically dubbed the special period. What happened on state farms also happened in state factories. Bureaucracy, incompetence, corruption, and the American embargo all combined to drive the economy off a cliff. Across most industries, output is now lower than it was before the revolution. 20 to 8 in the morning, which will be rush hour in most countries. But the motorway here, we're on a 4 or 5 lane motorway and it's almost completely empty of vehicles. I can't think of another country in the world I've been to where a road of this scale is so empty of cars, vans and lorries. Great if you're a driver, not so good if you're the economics minister trying to build the industry and economy of your country. But there is one obvious area of the economy that's doing well. Tourism. 100 miles east of Havana, one part of the sugar industry has found a new lease of life. Looks like it should be a new museum. It's a working steam train. Hola, Hernan. Mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto, Germán.
Hernan, how long have you been driving the train?
25 años conduciendo los trenes. Antiguamente era para transportar la caña de azúcar a la fábrica. 5 locomotoras que hacían la función de transportar la caña de azúcar. 4 meses que se hacía de zafra. 30 vagones con 2.000 arrobas de caña adentro. Cuando para la fábrica, comenzamos a hacer servicio al turismo. Damos viajes 5 veces a la semana con los turistas donde vienen y les gusta mucho.
Looks like I'm the driver's mate. We're going for a little trip. In a steam train. It's a steam train. How can it not be fun? It is a curious thing. This machine has so many quirks and makes so many different noises. It feels like a living creature. One with awesome power. The days of plentiful sugar harvests are over. But Hernan and his crew are among the lucky ones who still have jobs. Looks like celery. Need some sugar. 3 million visitors come to Cuba each year to enjoy its beaches and Caribbean culture. It's a trade worth almost £2 billion in precious foreign currency. But the government reforms are aimed at boosting visitor numbers still further. They want to milk the capitalist tourism industry for every bit of money they can get. I headed south into the nearby Zapata National Park. It's home to one of the most iconic locations of the Cuban Revolution, the Bay of Pigs. In April 1961, 1,500 anti-communist Cuban exiles, backed by the CIA, invaded the Bay in an attempt to overthrow the new socialist government. Fidel Castro personally led the island's defense. The fighting ended with a crushing defeat for the invaders.
The Bay of Pigs is the place where, as Fidel Castro put it himself, Yankee imperialism was defeated and humiliated, and socialism triumphed. And as such, it's a real icon of the revolution. It's also very symbolic, largely because there are a number of graves along the roadside here where Cuban soldiers fell defending the island and defending the revolution.
This area is crammed with revolutionary propaganda. The authorities don't want Cubans to forget their past. And they try to unify Cubans by warning them of the threat of more attacks.
We're just driving past a school here, a primary school, which is closed at the moment, but every day during term time, the students, it would appear, pass this rather inspiring educational motto, which says, every Cuban must learn to shoot and shoot well. Next to a primary school.
Buenos días. 63-year-old Saturnino was just a boy when the Bay of Pigs was invaded.
Saturnino, do people here still remember the attempted invasion?
Bueno, yo realmente era muy pequeño, tenía solo 12 años, pero recuerdo perfectamente los disparos, los aviones pasando, donde nos encontramos, en la zona allá, se hundió el barco Austin americano.
It must have been pretty terrifying.
No conocíamos de guerra, no conocíamos de nada de eso. Realmente fue un impacto para mí, que era un niño, que otras familias sí tuvieron baja en la familia, le dispararon y asesinaron un grupo de ciudadanos de aquí de este territorio.
Given the revolutionary status of the Bay of Pigs, you might think the government would be reluctant to introduce capitalist reforms here. But in just a year, the number of private guest houses shot up from just 12 to more than 80. Thanks to the new reforms, the Bay Area is booming. Among the new openings is Tiki.
Oh wow.
A B&B and cafe built by Saturnino, partly on top of his house.
Look at the view! My goodness!
Este es un viejo proyecto de la familia en hacer este tipo de restaurante. Lo que pasa es que en años anteriores no había la posibilidad de hacerlo.
It sounds like a real opportunity for you. Is it going well?
Creo que abrimos el restaurante, realmente ha tenido éxito. He visitado con muchos clientes y además el cliente que viene se queda maravillado por el lugar.
The government restricted the tourism industry in the past. Now, albeit reluctantly, the regime has finally realised it needs to make serious money from its coastline, one of its most valuable assets. There are plans to build more luxury hotels across the island, even multinational-owned golf resorts. For now, Saturnino's own ambitions are a little more modest.
Like other people in the area, Saturnino is not just offering tourists food, he's offering them a place to stay as well. So leave some cleaners in. Buenos días.
Esta es una habitación que tiene sala, tiene cocina, 2 habitaciones.
Is he a good boss?
Sí.
Quiere ser un buen jefe, uno más de la familia. Lo queremos mucho. Yo soy jubilada, yo me jubilé ya. Y la compañera es maestra.
What do you teach?
Maestra de primaria.
It must be quite an exciting time. Business is opening, more tourists coming, things are really changing.
Sí, como no. Estamos viviendo tiempos mejores. Todos podemos trabajar lo que quieran y tener los trabajos que quieran. Ventaja para nosotros y ventaja para el Estado. Estamos contentas con eso, sí. ¿Cómo no?
Only weeks after the Bay of Pigs invasion, Fidel Castro invited Western journalists to tour Cuba. One of the first stops on this PR jaunt was a newly collectivized rice farm. Intended to impress on his foreign audience that socialism was working and the country would soon be able to feed itself. I travelled deep into Matanzas state following in Castro's footsteps. Most Cubans live in the countryside. Like the Cubans I met in Havana, farm workers have also benefited hugely from the revolution, with free healthcare and education. But economically, the revolution has been a disaster out here. Today, the island imports up to 70% of its food.
Ramon? Buenos días, Ramon. Buenos días. What are you doing here, Ramon? What's going on?
Secando un poco de arroz, esto es arroz para semillas. Entonces se seca un poco de arroz para guardarlo en la casa para el año que viene que pueda sembrarlo.
Ramon spent most of his life working on a collective rice farm.
This doesn't look like it's the hardest bit of the work, I imagine.
El arroz no es fácil. El trabajo siempre es duro. No es suave, ¿no? Ya trasladarse la amarilla aquí nada más en un tractor es bravo.
And look at the tractor.
Estos fueron los primeros yum que compró Cuba a la Unión Soviética. Mi hermano. Este es mi hermano.
It looks loved and cared for, but it does look quite old.
Sí. El fango maltrata mucho el tractor. Eso año por año hay que tirarle un cabo, porque la transmisión sufre mucho en el fondo. Anoche por poco duermo entre el fango.
Cuba's Soviet-era bureaucracy imposed some peculiar rules on what could be farmed, even out in the countryside. We had to toe the line.
Here and across the country, local people used to plant extra crops in the wild to supplement their ration. But if the authorities found the crops, they'd rip them out. The state had to control everything and everyone.
But now the authorities are letting go. In a remarkable turnaround, the state is allowing farmers like Ramon to lease government land and become their own bosses. He's now hiring seasonal workers to help him farm, but motivating them can be quite a challenge.
It's 10 to 11 in the morning, have they not turned up?
Ya me dijeron que dentro de media hora ya estaban cargando la moto. Dentro de media hora, una hora están aquí.
This is the problem with being the boss, with being the man in charge. You have to worry about all these different things. You have to manage the people as well and get them here.
Sí, allá atrás va. Allá atrás.
One of the biggest headaches for new farmers like Ramon has been how to make overgrown fields productive again. Much of Cuba's agricultural land has been covered by an aggressive weed called marabou.
Some of your fields were, in this sort of condition, completely overgrown.
Aquí se pasa bastante trabajo Desde que nosotros llegamos al campo es marabú y es esto y es aquello y lo otro. Y entonces desde que nosotros arrancamos por la mañana ahí machete y tractores para acá y tractores para allá. Todas las espinas allá adentro, después la gente para sembrarla cualquier cosa, la encaja.
Marabú es difícil.
So you finished the day bleeding from head to toe.
Para producir, sangre para producir.
It's midday when Ramon's gang eventually turn up for work. So finally here come the workers.
Ramon, they're all late. That's what's going in. It's still wet, well it's damp at least. That's what they're going to pop in. It's wonderful to hold actually. You think of what a staple this is for, well, billions of people on the planet, but a lot of Cubans as well.
Rice production is now rising as more than 150,000 Cubans have signed up to lease their own farmland and take control of their own patch of the island. It's a huge change and could help to transform the economy of the country.
Ramon's done here was very impressive. Taking ownership of the land, taking responsibility for it, clearing it, running it, maintaining it, managing workers who aren't necessarily used to being managed. It's a hell of a task, a hell of a headache. But if he gets it right, he gets the reward. So how does it feel to be the boss man now, the man in charge, rather than one of the workers as you were in the past?
No, bien, me siento bien. Mejor que antes. No lo mismo dirigir que trabajar.
I think Ramon is rather enjoying being the boss.
Work done. Ramon invited me home to meet his family.
You can tell it's a farming community when they're drying corn outside. So you're not taking your shoes off? I'm taking my shoes off. It's okay. No? You want me to put them on? They're muddy. Hold up. Simon. Is this Mum? This is Mum, I presume. I don't know. Where's Daddy? Kisses. This is what we like to see. Look at this. Food already on the table.
Arroz, el que cosechamos ahora.
This is your rice.
Arroz.
So it's like chicken, but what have we got down here?
Esto es del plátano, son chatinos.
It seemed Ramon wasn't the only new entrepreneur in the family. Thanks to the reforms, his son Carlos had set up a bicycle taxi service.
Se trabaja un poco duro porque te levantas de temprano y es tarde y todavía estás dando pedales. Y cargas muchas personas, a veces hay personas gordas, otras flacas, a veces 2, 3 y pesan mucho.
So this is a very exciting time for the family then.
Sí, ahorita me pongo cambio. No he hecho, pero ha hecho cambio.
Turns out, Mum has opened a clothing store, I think. Can you tell us a little bit about that? It's a very enterprising family.
Ahí se vende ropa que nosotros adquirimos y la vendemos ahí a un precio módico que las personas puedan adquirir. Y entonces llevo 4 meses vendiendo y me va bien. Un trabajo que te va dando, pero que a la vez tiene que ir gastando también y todo tiene su... Pero hasta ahora todo va bien. Estamos felices.
This food is really delicious. Have you thought about opening a little restaurant as well?
No me gusta mucho cocinar.
It's really interesting to see what's happening with the family here and in this area as well, because it shows that the reforms aren't just affecting and changing the lives of the Cubans who live in cities, but they're changing the lives of the millions of Cubans who live in the countryside as well.
It was the weekend, and I was back in Havana. But rather than heading to the beach, some of the locals were heading to a bustling little market, unlike any I'd ever seen.
Buenos dias! Buenos dias! Sorry to trouble you. Can I just ask you, what are you selling?
Estamos vendiendo un apartamento capitalista del año 59.
So it's got a living room, a balcony, a bathroom, it's all in great condition.
Lo que pasa que ahora en nuestro país es que se puede hacer la compra-venta legalmente. Entonces todo el mundo está como que revuelto. La Habana está revuelta.
Under communism, Cubans were only permitted to swap their homes. But now, for the first time, people have the freedom to sell. That's created a property market almost overnight. This is a city up for sale, and change for some can't come quickly enough.
You sleep together in the one room?
Y mi novio, my best friend, pero es un solo cuarto, uno solo.
Is that difficult?
Claro, sure. Tengo que ver, puedo llegar, no puedo llegar, toco, abro.
There's more to the new housing market, of course, than saving a mum's blushes.
Allowing people to buy and sell property, creating a property market, is probably the biggest single social change of the new reforms. It's also the most significant loosening of the grip the state has over Cuba since the revolution.
House prices are rising, and this property boom is attracting a new breed of entrepreneurs. Businesswomen like Acaena.
Bueno, yo te diré que yo vivo en un pueblecito de Matanza y vine para acá, para La Habana, a vender quesito. Me encuentro con una señora de mi pueblo y me dice, Acaena, búscame una casa en La Habana. Si esta casa tenemos $50,000 para comprarla. Yo dije, $50,000. Oh, tengo que buscar la casa en La Habana. Bueno, le encuentro una casa y cuando yo vi que yo me busqué $300, yo dije $300, ni vendo más quesito, no voy más para la Matanza, para el campo. Me gusta vender casa, me fascina vender casa, me encanta.
Can I see what properties you've got in the notebook? Can you just show us some?
Tengo la casa más cara en Buenavista, $800,500.
How much? That must be a palace.
Es una casa muy inmensa, tiene 8 cuartos, tiene 8 baños, tiene 2 jacuzzi, tiene 3 gimnasios, de columnas colonial, también una casa muy linda.
You've gone from selling cheese in the countryside to selling properties that are worth an absolute fortune. Your life has changed in an extraordinary way.
Total, un cambio general. Porque de hecho yo venía con unos zapatos malos, yo venía con unos shoes malos aquí a vender quesito, a vender mantequilla, y de hecho ya me he visto mejor, tengo el pelo más bonito, tengo ropa más linda.
The authorities say that creating a property market and the rest of the new reforms are just tinkering with the socialist system. But it looks a lot like something else to me.
This is the absolute foundation of capitalism. Allowing people to buy and sell property creates capital. It means people can take out loans on their houses, for example, to open a fast food joint or open a tailoring business. It really feels like this is the start of fundamental change in Cuba.
With all this money changing hands, you have to ask, where's it all coming from? It's not just local. Havana International Airport. A flight had just landed from Miami, packed with Cuban-American passengers. For decades, the US banned Cuban Americans from visiting the island, but they can now come and go as they wish. That's the first major thaw in US-Cuba relations for 50 years. But almost as significant as the human traffic is what the passengers bring with them.
Travellers are allowed to bring in what are termed gift parcels for relatives, which basically presents for the family, but it's not unusual to see people turning up here with half a dozen suitcases and huge bags packed with stuff.
Visitors arrive with televisions, clothes and even food that's sold onto Cuba's new shops and restaurants. But just as importantly, Cuban Americans also send or bring cash to the island to help their Cuban relatives survive. This informal trade is worth billions of pounds every year.
I actually find this quite ironic because Cuba's always made great play of the fact that it's independent, but in reality it's always been very dependent on the Soviet Union during Soviet times, and now it depends in large part on the United States and Cuban Americans for many supplies and for remittances, and that surely proves how fundamentally weak Cuba's economy actually is.
Officially, capitalism is still a dirty word in Cuba. The government still insists their reforms are just a slight modification to the communist system. But market forces are taking root, and that means there are losers and there are winners. There's a small, growing middle class in Cuba, and I headed to one of their new hangouts.
So this is La Pachanga, a burger bar over here. Seems to be very successful, judging by the number of cars that are outside. It's also got security on the door. Hola, buenas noches. Buenas noches.
La Pachanga is owned by the former manager of a state hotel.
Sergio! Buenas noches.
A few months ago, Sergio opened La Pachanga inside his own home. For Cubans, its menu of burgers and fries is an exotic taste of life beyond the communist ration shops.
No, porque hay un privado dentro, está climatizado.
You've got a VIP area. Can we have a look at that? Would we be at least allowed to have a look at the VIP area? Oh, let's see. Finished. Oh my goodness. This is a burger joint with a difference, eh? So how do you get to be a VIP and come in here? What qualifications are required?
Principalmente la farándula, ¿no? De la plástica, el escritor, la unidad, el músico, la televisión, la radio.
Was this your dream?
Siempre soñé con tener algo menor, algo más pequeño, ¿no? De hecho, he ido creciendo en el interior de mi casa, ¿no? Que se acomodó para esto. Este es el primer cuarto, esta área es el primer cuarto, aquí es el segundo cuarto. Mañana, tarde, noche, ante cualquier problema estás aquí,
siempre va a estar bien. Si hay un cliente que quiere conversar o hablar con el dueño a las 2 de la mañana, a las 3, yo estoy aquí.
Sounds a little bit like having a demanding baby.
Mi cuarto, bebé. Este es el cuarto. Tengo 3 nenes ahí, ese.
Back into the normal world. Never lasts in the VIP room. It hasn't taken long for Sergio to master the basic principles of the free market. And so look, one thing that Sergio's been really, I think, quite innovative about, he's branded almost everything with La Pachanga. La Pachanga, you can see it's on all of the tables.
Y esta es la mascota. Esto es un muñeco de cachú y mostaza. La capa es una hoja de lechuga. Es decir, como si fuera un Superman, pero un super pachanga. Se come una pachanga, una hamburguesa, y se pone fuerte, ¿no? Ya los niños lo van a cultivar. Así, es decir, es lo más importante que ha pasado hasta ahora. Es la única forma que tenía que los clientes vinieran hacia acá. Porque, es decir, en Cuba nunca existió nada de esto. Pero es una forma de darse a conocer.
Like countless fast food franchises around the world, Sergio hands out merchandise branded with his ketchup and mustard superhero. La Pachanga t-shirts, caps, even bumper stickers can be seen all over Havana. It's all designed to encourage brand loyalty, and it's working. Behind the scenes.
Hey, look, more La Pachanga. Buenas noches. There's not a lot of room, sorry. Desculpe.
El garaje. Aquí guardaba mi coche. Y por ahí entraba a mi habitación.
Sergio now employs more than 40 people, and tonight there's just about room to squeeze in one more.
Guess what the gloves are for? It's not a customs check. It was either this, or I would have to do the washing up. I can't stand doing the washing up. Credit to this gentleman, he's doing it very well.
Aquí está la malla.
Magic formula.
Comida, un poquito de pimienta, sal y orégano.
Is being a boss part of what you enjoy about this whole enterprise, this whole business?
Lo que más me gusta es que los clientes se vayan sonriendo y se vayan satisfechos. Mientras se van satisfechos es que todo sale bien.
How many meals are you serving every day?
500, 700, por ejemplo, los sábados, 800, 1000.
1,000 meals a day? My goodness!
A meal here typically costs about £3. That's around a week's wages for most state workers. La Pachanga's popularity shows just how much private money is already flowing around Havana.
Fire, look at that, it's a disaster. All I had to do was flip the burger. The burger is fragmenting, disintegrating under my watch here. Okay, so you definitely do not want me working the burger cooker, really, do you? You want a proper professional in here. I should get out of the way. I return, sir, to you. Your La Pachanga hat. So can you imagine yourself in 5 or 10 years becoming the McDonald's of Cuba with branches, La Pachanga branches across the country? Is that the ultimate aim? Is that the goal?
Eso quisiera. Pero bueno, estamos con Reeve. Esta me va bien. Pero ese es el sueño, ¿no? Ya el primer sueño se cumplió. El segundo sueño es tener bien de esto.
Wow. Gracias. Thank you, Sergio. Let's give it a try. Get the size of this. Excuse me, there's no delicate way of doing this. I'm not really a burger fan, but this is good. It's a tasty, meaty meal of a burger.
This place really does surprise me. Not least because we have to keep remembering that until very recently this was a former communist state with a really quite authoritarian government. I'm amazed at how quickly people have embraced the changes. It's all going surprisingly well.
Callejero viajero. Callejero viajero.
Castro's mantra for Cuba was socialism or death. And for most Cubans, socialism's all they've ever known. But even the Cuban government has had to acknowledge the need for urgent change. They think they can allow just a bit of capitalism into Cuba, using it to generate tax revenues that will preserve the best aspects of the socialist legacy. But it seems to me the genie is already out of the bottle. Embracing capitalism will set in train an unstoppable momentum for change. It won't be long before the new middle classes start demanding greater personal freedoms, questioning authority, even calling for democracy and the end of one-party rule. Cuba is now experiencing its second revolution, and I think the impact will prove as monumental as the first. I suspect this really was my last chance to see Castro's Cuba.
Hasta la victoria siempre.
Next up this evening, here on BBC HD, stay with us for comedy and a big question for Becky's dad, in Him and Her.